Hello, good afternoon. My name is Mel Kettle. If you don't know who I am, I assume you do because my name is all over what you're looking at the moment. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. I'm talking about communicating boundaries and how to say no. Excuse me, of course, I'm just about to have a coughing fit. I should have had this 10 minutes ago. Before I get started, I just would like to say that I have opened the doors for a quick little end of financial year special for those of us in Australia for my Thriving Leaders program. I'm now running this program only once a year, and the next round is in August, starts the first week of August, and I won't be doing it again until next year. So if you're keen to join, you can just go to my website, melkettle.com. /thriving leaders, but if you just go to melkettle.com, you'll find it. And I have a $500 off until the 30th of June. So if you have any questions about that, just give me a shout and I can get back to you or have a chat if you'd prefer. All my details are on my website. But to get into it, boundaries, healthy boundaries. Who has healthy boundaries and who does not? And I know that for a long time, I did not have healthy boundaries and I had no boundaries. And so that made life a little bit tricky in many areas. And for those of you who may not be sure what a boundary is a rule and a guideline that we create to protect ourselves. Now, Brene Brown, I don't think I've ever done anything where I haven't quoted Queen Brene at least once. And today I'm quoting her when she says, "Daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing others." How good is that? Having boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing others. So, building and maintaining boundaries is kind of like building and maintaining a house. I live in an area on the Sunshine Coast, where there's lots of new houses going up, lots of renovations. And like a boundary, a house has a foundation. The foundation needs to be strong, just as your boundaries need to be strong. And our boundaries are built on a foundation of self-awareness, values, self-respect, self-worth. And like the foundations of our house, the boundaries that we have provide stability and support for our well-being. Just like a house has structure, our boundaries need structure. We need to be establishing a clear distinction between our thoughts, our feelings, and our personal space, and those of other people who are around us. And a solid structure with our boundaries makes us feel safe, just like having a solid structure in a house makes us feel safe. The doors and the windows in our house allow us to let people in or ask people to leave through the front door, preferably, not through the window. And they allow you to, and just like in a boundary, they allow you to control who enters and exits your personal life and your personal space. And you can choose to open your boundaries to let people in, or you can close them to maintain your privacy and security. So it's really important that we create and establish and communicate and maintain our healthy boundaries if we want to have a healthy life. So it helps us have a better sense of well-being. It helps us to prioritize self-care, and it helps us to have greater sense of self-awareness and self-worth. And when we can communicate them, we have stronger relationships when we communicate them effectively. So why do we need healthy boundaries? Well, we need boundaries because it's a form of self-care. I know for myself, I have boundaries that mean I go to bed at a certain time. I turn off the TV at a certain time at night. I put my book down at a certain time at night so I can get enough sleep. I have boundaries around who I work with and the type of work I do. I'm a communication strategist. I work with leaders and teams and organizations to help them communicate, to create real connection and sustained engagement. If someone came to me and said, "Hey, Mel, can you do my tax?" I'd be like, "Yeah, no, I don't do tax. I'm not an accountant. I'm a communication strategist." And so that's a boundary that I have. It also means like I have boundaries around other kinds of work that I do that fall under the communication remit. But and again, I'm really clear on what that looks like. I'm clear in how I spend my work day and my work week. It's very rare that I do meetings before 10 a.m. It's very rare that I commit to doing things on a Monday because they're the times where I need to set myself up for the day and the week. It's very rare personally that I would organize to go out more than 2 nights during the week because I don't have the energy for that and because I go to bed at 9:30. I have a boundary around that. So having healthy boundaries allows us to prevent burnout because we protect our physical self, our mental self, and our emotional health. It allows us to help look after our personal identity. It allows us to build respectful relationships and to make decisions that align with our values and our priorities. I put on a LinkedIn post earlier today that my husband and I have just cranked up 20 years together. Don't know how that happened, but we did. And one of the reasons that we have had such a successful relationship over that 20 years, and I'm not to say we haven't had arguments and fights and challenges and difficult times, because you don't get to 20 years without having at least, some of those things some of the time. But one of the reasons is because we put boundaries around the language that we use with each other, the way that we treat each other. We show respect to each other, and we know that it's not appropriate to not be respectful of our time, of each other's time and space and energy, and the language that we use with each other. When we have healthy boundaries in place, we have more balance and energy and focus, and we know what we want to be focusing our time and our energy and our attention on. And it helps us build stronger relationships with people, both personally and professionally, because we are clear on what we do and don't want, both in all aspects of our work and life. And if you're wondering whether you need better boundaries, a few of the signs that suggest you might are things like feeling overworked and overwhelmed and overextended, and having difficulty saying no to things, and finding it hard to make decisions, and feeling guilted into lending money or stuff to people who ask if they can borrow it or have it. Setting boundaries can be really difficult, particularly if you're a people pleaser. I used to be a people pleaser, and now, as I'm getting older, I don't really care. I'm sorry, but I know who I care about in my life. And if you're a stranger and you want me to do something that goes against my boundaries, I have no qualms in saying no. So, but I've learned this, and I've learned this over the years, and it has not been easy. Particularly, I think, for women, particularly of my generation, Gen X and older, we are brought up to serve. I was taught from an extremely young age to put other people before myself. And so there's a whole lifetime of learning that needs to happen in order to create healthy boundaries for yourself in a way that you don't feel you're letting people down. One of the quotes I love is by Paulo Coelho, and he said, "When you say yes to other people, make sure you're not saying no to yourself." How good is that? When you say yes to others, make sure you're not saying no to yourself. And Steve Jobs said, "It's only by saying no that you can concentrate on the things that are really important." One of the things that I've really learned over the years of being in business is that I say no to a lot these days. And that means that when I say yes, it's far more valued by people who want something from me, particularly if I'm asked by the same person to do things that don't align with my values or my priorities. And I say, no, 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 no. And then when they say something that does, and I say, yeah, actually, I could do that. I've got the time for that. I'm interested in that. I would love to work with you on that. They're so much more appreciative, and they value the input that I have because I've said yes when they're used to me saying no. And I don't just say no, I give a reason. So I've really learned that saying no can be far more powerful than saying yes. And it's a sign of someone who is very clear in what they are, who they are, what they stand for, and what they want. And it's a sign of someone who knows how to prioritize themselves. And when we prioritize ourselves, we have, as I've said before, we have more energy and we have more sense of self-worth, which means we come across as being more confident. And who doesn't want that? So, there's a few areas, scrolling through my notes here, there's a few areas where we need to have boundaries in place, and we need to have them when it comes to things like work, our family, our relationships with our friends, time and space. We need to have boundaries around how we use technology and when. And we need boundaries around our health and around money and around our stuff. And so, for an example, with technology, one of the boundaries I have is that I have an hour limit on my phone for when I can use social media on my phone. So I set it for an hour a day across LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. And I don't have Facebook on my phone. And I go through phases of not having any social media or much social media on my phone. But I have an hour. And so at the 55-minute mark, I get a warning. And I know that I'm just about at the end of that hour. Now, sure, I could override it, and often I do, but it's a really good indicator for me that I've probably spent enough time looking at social media on my phone today. And particularly if I get that warning at 8 o'clock in the morning, I quite like it when I get it at 8 o'clock at night, because it means I've done better things with my time over the course of the day. But then look at things like work. How do you have boundaries at work? What are some of the areas where you need boundaries? Is it around things like what meetings you attend, the hours that you work, the times that you have lunch breaks or start and finish work? And if you're a business owner, then what boundaries do you have around who you work with? How do your clients treat your staff? What is no longer acceptable? I've worked in organizations where we had one awful client, and we finished the project and my boss said, "We won't be working with you again." And when they pressed, she said, "Because this particular person in your organization didn't treat my staff with the respect they deserve." And so, what are your boundaries around things like that? And in your organization, do you have a strategic plan? Do you have operational plans? Do you have policies and processes that talk about the way you do things around your organization? Because they're all boundaries from a work perspective. Now, one of the things I want to quickly touch on as well is, how do you say no? I've briefly mentioned that I'm really good at saying no. I have practiced in the mirror to get the right tone and the right expression on my face, so that I'm not saying no and scowling and glaring at people. When we say no, or when we communicate our boundaries, we really want to be able to communicate them with kindness and with clarity and with compassion and with courage and with consistency. And so when you're saying no, it's so much easier if you've already talked to the person you're saying no to about what you're good at. So, or about not what you're good at, about what you're prepared to do. So all of my clients know that I don't answer the phone very often. They know that they should send me a text rather than leave me a voicemail. They know that I don't tend to do meetings before 10 a.m. They know that I rarely answer the phone before 10 a.m. And they know all these things because I tell them. I communicate them up front. When I start to work with a new client, questions I ask are, how do you like to be communicated with? How do you like to work? How can I reach you if I need to talk to you urgently? And then I share all of my preferences for that. One of my clients is I'm helping them through a really big change project at the moment. And we had a meeting and she said, "I need to communicate these things to my people." And I said, "Great. If you want to draft the email that you're wanting to say, shoot it through to me. I'm happy to have a look at it." And then I said to her, "My email's off for a lot of the day. So when you've sent it through, can you send me a quick text and then I can go and have a look at it, rather than waiting until the end of the day when I would otherwise check my email?" And so that worked really well for both of us, because she knew that I would look at it. I knew the email had come in. I could text her and say, "I'm out of the office. I'll be back in half an hour. I'll look at it then and I'll send it through." It's just keeping those channels of communication open. But how do you say no? So there's a whole bunch of ways. No is a complete sentence. I can't remember who said that. I think it was Annie Lamott. But you can say no, thank you. You can say, "No, I'm not interested." You can say, "No, thank you, but I'm not available." You can say, "Thank you, but this is not right for me right now." Or, when I get invited to go out in the evening to a lot of different things that I just don't want to go to, I just say, "Thanks, I can't do that. I've got a busy day the next day and I have to have an early night that night," whether I do or not. Now, when you say no, you don't need to give a reason either. But I do feel that sometimes, depending on who it is, a reason softens the blow of the no. I'd also just like to say, if you're invited to something, or if you've been asked to do something and you know that you won't be, give a quick no. A quick no, when you know, just gets it out of your head and their head. I've got a few proposals out at the moment, and I know they won't all come through, and that's totally okay. But what is very frustrating is when you get ghosted professionally by somebody who has asked you to submit a proposal to do some work. Now, if I'm not right for you, that's fine. I'm not right for everyone. You're not right for everyone. But if you get a proposal from someone from a work perspective, no matter what it is, whether it's something on your house or something at work, and you know that they're not right for you, give them the courtesy of telling them that. And you don't need to go into the detail. You can just say, we've gone with somebody else this time. That's all. This isn't going to work for us this time. We've chosen someone else. Just be kind and say no that way. Quick no. So saying no at work can be a challenge. One of the questions I get asked a lot is, how do I tell my boss that I can't do this project because I'm already overworked? So one of the things that you can do is, if it's your manager who's giving you the work, just go to them and say, I've got all this work to do. Can you help me prioritize? What's most important? What needs to get done first? What can get done last? What do we still need to be doing all of these things? Help me prioritize. Another thing you can say, if you get asked to do something, if you work for yourself and it's not right, is, thanks for thinking of me. This sounds like an interesting initiative. Or, thanks for thinking about me. This is a great opportunity. Can I think about it? I'll get back to you tomorrow. Or, it's not right for me. This person would be better at this. Think about why you're saying no as well. Are you saying no because you're overworked, or because you don't have the confidence, or because it's something that's genuinely not right for you? All of these things help us say no in a better way. And then finally, I'd just like to say, and I've totally lost the pages of my notes here. When it comes to setting healthy boundaries, start small. Start with something that is going to have a big impact on your life or your work life, and start communicating what that might be to people, particularly if they're not used to you having that boundary in place. So one of the things that I started doing a few years ago, and if you've listened to me talk on this topic, you'll know that it's something that I'm quite passionate about, is getting enough sleep. I used to be very social. I still am, but I changed my social times from in the middle of the night until the middle of the day. So you've got to work out what works for you and what you want from life and what are your priorities. And if saying yes to things, or if not having boundaries around things that mean that you don't get to do the things that are the most important to you, then have a think about how you can change that. So I'm going to go now. This took way longer than I thought. I've talked for far more minutes than I thought I was going to talk on this topic. And I don't know why I thought I would be quick, because it is my favorite subject. So healthy boundaries. I do have more information on my website, melkettle.com. I have a checklist that you can download that talks about whether you need healthy boundaries or not, or whether you might need to put some boundaries in place, and some ways that you can say no. So melkettle.com/boundaries. I've also got a short course on boundaries. The link to that, I think it's melkettle.com/blueprint. It's called Your Blueprint to Healthy Boundaries. But if you just go to my homepage, all the information is on there. So thank you so much for watching and listening, and I will see you again, or you'll listen to me again soon. Bye.